I now have the great pleasure of introducing the next session for our event today, and this is looking at the notion of supporting small business wellbeing. We know without falling victim to perfectionism and burnout, we know that small businesses have been brutally impacted by the pandemic and the fallout of it. With ongoing lockdown and restrictions. So how does small business get back to business in a way that's healthy and sustainable? I'd like to introduce Dr. Addie Wootten and Sally Elson for this session. Dr. Addie Wootten is a clinical psychologist by background, and she's the CEO of Smiling Mind, a not-for-profit web and app-based meditation program developed by psychologists and educators to help bring mindfulness into your life. And Sally Elson is the head of people advisory and talent at MYOB, who is a proud supporter of this entire program. So we thank MYOB for that. And with over 25 years of experience, Sally, in the human resources sector, Sally is a passionate leader. She's got experience managing large teams across a variety of industries and has led large-scale change management programs of work. So thank you so much to both of you for joining me today for this very important conversation. I want to kickstart the conversation. I mean, it is very kind of obvious to everyone. We've heard so many stories. We've heard all of the statistics. Female small business owners, especially those working within female-dominated industries, have been some of the hardest hit during the pandemic. So how do we reboot after such a tumultuous time? I know as a small business owner myself, there have been times throughout this entire period where, you've just felt so overwhelmed, so under siege, you don't know what is coming next. And I think, we're all entering this next year, even though there's this kind of promise of normality, we're still feeling the repercussions of what's just happened and the uncertainty and the unpredictability of that. So how do we move on? Addie, I might start with you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Tarla. Well, following on from the last session, I'd firstly like to acknowledge the amazing traditional owners of the lands that I'm sitting on today and acknowledge the Wadawurrung people. What a wonderful conversation you have just had with such amazing women. Look, I agree with you. I think it's been an incredibly hard couple of years for all people, but particularly women running small businesses. I think the ebbs and flows and the changes have really been a challenge, and it has been like weathering a storm, hasn't it? That, we just haven't known what's coming our way, and the uncertainty that we've all had to live with has really impacted our mental health and our well-being, as well as our businesses. I think, it's a big question. How do we move on from 2 years of turmoil? I think there's lots of factors that contribute to that. From my perspective, it is about finding a way to reset and recalibrate and look ahead, and to try and take some of the good things that have come from this pandemic and the impact of the pandemic and keep them with us. So what do we bring into the future? What do we want to leave behind? And how do we harness the resources that we have available to support us into the future? The joys of working from home.
It's always something.
Exactly. Yeah. So, this is real life, isn't it? This is what it's been like for 2 years, that, we're working in, tricky situations, and we're really trying our hardest. I think, one of the things that has really shone out for me as a, maybe a green shoot or a good thing from the pandemic is that we are incredibly aware of our well-being now, more than we ever have been before. And, I think that has come about because of the challenges that we've all experienced, but it actually really is something that we can leverage. Hopefully they are some of the things that we can bring into the future that will help us be stronger, be more resilient, and hopefully to be kinder to ourselves. I think one of the challenges, particularly as women leaders running businesses, is that, we can be incredibly hard on ourselves.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a good point, is that a lot of women, a lot of people in Australia, but a lot of women do note experiencing that imposter syndrome. And I think off the back of, what we've just experienced and so many kind of hardships and the hit that the businesses have taken, that feeling is probably even more acute for a lot of us. And in that scramble to get things right and to get things back onto an even keel again. Sally, how do we, I guess, mitigate that feeling of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We did some research recently as well. So during the pandemic, people are feeling busier, but not necessarily more productive, which I think is scary, right? But it kind of feels right. Like, I know it feels like it's harder, sometimes to do things. So in order to, I think, come out of this is when we need to think about what are the practices and the processes, particularly for those SMEs, in terms of how do they switch that busyness from a bit of the the bad busyness to being good busy, which is about the effectiveness of their business and how they can utilize tools to get rid of that bad busy and to allow them to be good busy. Because I think obviously with that, then it brings some of the mental health challenges that Addie mentioned as well that we're seeing, because it's feeling really hard and not seeing the outcomes of that. So I do think there's absolutely ways of taking this as a moment to reset, thinking about the work that is done. And I think there's some stats that we've got, that half of small business owners are spending 2 to 10 hours on admin tasks outside of their work week. So, this has been additional throughout this period as well. And how do we reset on that? That's, something that can be utilising tools and things that are available in digitisation as well. There's also some great information around how businesses that have been able to access digital tools have been able to be more, work through this process more seamlessly than those that haven't got that access as well.
Addie, do you have things to add to that?
Yeah, I think the system stuff is really interesting, isn't it? How do we reflect on the impact of the last couple of years? We have had to innovate really quickly and change things and pivot the way we work, and some of that has flown into improvements and efficiencies, and we've learned amazing different ways of working, including the opportunity for virtual connections rather than traveling for hours and hours to get to people, and that probably is leading to great efficiencies. There's also the personal sort of side of that, isn't there? And that is around feeling like, if you think about busyness, and that idea of how do we foster being productive busy or good busy, and I think for some of us it is about the mindset and the personal skills that we start to develop as well, and I think the period of time that we've been through has helped for some of us focus in on that. How do we learn some of these strategies and techniques that we can apply personally to our own, the way that we work and the way that we interact with people, and then that broader system level focus as well. I think it is about finding a way to step out of that mentality to think that we have to be busy all the time, and that we that we judge ourselves based on how busy we are, because that can contribute to really negative patterns of working, and longer term it can definitely lead to burnout, which is a huge worry, I think, at the moment, given the level of pressure and stress and exhaustion that many people are feeling.
And I think, can I add to those? I think definitely starting to see this challenge, right? This busyness, these hours that people are doing outside of their normal business hours. that we're working from home, then it encroaches on all of the other elements of your life, and family and friendships and exercise and all of those elements that we know are so important for all of us, for our mental health. And it's a real challenge in terms of, I think, like, absolutely, I can talk about the tools and, digitization that can help on the processes, but how do we all find the space to go, I'm present here doing this right now, and then I'm present here doing this, and compartmentalize our lives when it has just, integrated into one place. That we sit here and do the same thing.
Yeah. I know. And I think, for small businesses as well, for everyone at the moment, we have just been working from home so much, and I guess there, in some conversations we have, it's seen as a really positive change because, we've now got possibly more flexibility in our work schedule and more capacity to kind of cover off things that we need to at home and balance things there. But I also think that my own experience as a small business owner is that this period has made me work a lot harder, and to forget those hours in my day, or those moments in my day where I should be going and taking a walk or taking a break. So, I guess, how do we implement that kind of schedule and really stick to it? I think that's one of the hardest things, is challenging our mindset to kind of get back onto that footing.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to jump in. It's a vortex, isn't it? I think the working from home vortex, it's hard to even remember what happened last week, let alone, what day of the week it is. And you can get absorbed into the doing. I think awareness is the foundation for me around how do you learn to check in with yourself to know what you need in your day-to-day, week-to-week life. And I think it's about, really taking stock of what you're trying to do and achieve in your work, in your life, and learning how to prioritize things. But that does take time to build that awareness and really understand, well, what do you need as a person, based on your values, your goals in life. I think it really needs to align with what you're trying to achieve. And often we can get stuck in that vortex and feel like the only way of us achieving what our goals are is to keep working harder and harder and harder, which is unfortunately a bit of a paradox, because the harder we work and the longer we work, the less productive we become. But sometimes it feels like we can't get out of that hamster wheel. We actually do need to almost force ourselves to stop, reflect on what we need in our lives, and actually plan how to integrate that into our day-to-day life. At the start of the pandemic, I think there were kind of two different responses. There were those people that really looked at their schedule and planned and forced themselves to keep their exercise regime up, and to, get up at the same time every day, and to have a shower, to get dressed, all of those things that, you normally do when you get up and go to work. There was a sense that, some people really invested in making sure that they continued to follow that routine. And then there were others that really struggled with that, and might have got, really caught up in the all of the things that we have to do at home. And I think that those people that could structure their routine and continue on with some of those things that they knew were really helpful for them, have actually started to form really great habits out of that they've become, more able to navigate these weird times. And so for me, that suggests that actually, humans get swayed by lots of different things, and we actually do have to be our own coach and learn how to build habits and structures around ourselves that are good and positive for ourselves, because otherwise we do get sucked into the other stuff that will inevitably come our way.
And I think I can, kind of build on that as well. I think from some of the research as well around small business owners and how they prioritise their time, and the whole concept of working in the business versus on the business, and even understanding when you're at your most productive, and most of the research says people find in the mornings they are more productive. I'm personally not, right? And I've kind of worked that out, and now and I'm like, I wish I was more productive. But it's then how and what you do in your day to get that most productive. And I think for small business or, for small business owners, it's how do they understand what it is that is their objective for their business. And everyone has a different reason for going into their own business as well. So it can be lifestyle, it can be financial, it can be just passion, and what that actually is and where they want to take their business, and understanding what that is, and then being able to set aside that time to work on the business, again, to reach their objectives and what their goals are in a bit of a structured way, to because otherwise you never get to it, right? It's all that stuff that, there's always another email, there's always another call, there's, a bit more admin we can do. So having that structure there, and we go back to those organisations or those small businesses that invest in the digitisation of the stuff that can send you down a rabbit hole, right? Just allocating, your bank feeds and things like that can just take hours if you let it. My husband has a small business, and I used to do his accounts, and originally I was doing one spreadsheet.
You're brave.
This was a long time ago, and I was like, that was such a waste of time, right? And to then we invested and got an MIB, of course, but all of a sudden, that was something that he now sits in the car and does the invoices once he's finished a job. And so little things like that once we said, okay, what are we going to do? This is work. It felt as a small business owner, you're like, oh, that's too expensive. Can we, commit to that in an ongoing way? But really thinking about the time it frees you up to be doing the right work. And that's, again, that right, the good busyness versus the bad busy. I think it's really important, even as small business owners, to have those commercial conversations with yourself, going, where should I invest to just get rid of this stuff? It ends up taking me half a day a week, and or whatever, even sometimes an hour a week. That's a lot of time. And it comes down to your own choices, because I want to spend it with my family, because I want to spend it with my friends, or because I want to spend it, in working on the business. I think it's really important to understand the opportunities that are there for you, and set them up appropriately so you're getting what you want out of your business.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because often that kind of mentality can provide a bit of a false economy of sorts. You're trying to save money, but you're actually costing yourself not only money but your time and energy and mental health often. So looking at where we can outsource. I mean, obviously it's not always possible when businesses are under pressure, but I think just rationalizing that and thinking about where we need to put our focus, and what is going to be ultimately profitable for every aspect of our business is really key. I want to talk about the experience that lots of women do have, and why it's often harder for women who own small businesses to take the time out they need to look after their health and well-being. Why do you both feel that that's something that we struggle with? Addie, I might go to you first.
Oh, it's a tricky question, isn't it? I think putting myself in that question, look, I think there's lots of factors. Interestingly, we ran some research recently and asked people what they do to look after their mental health, and women were more likely to endorse proactively looking after their mental health than men, which is interesting because I think there is a bit of, that we also know that women take on a lot of other activities, and that is a side effect of a whole lot of history and societal and cultural norms. but there is certainly, so there's this duality, I suppose, that on the one hand, women are much more likely to understand that they need to proactively look after their mental health and well-being, and they need to do things that support them, and they might be more inclined to engage with complementary sort of approaches, talking to someone, talking therapies, or at least, talking to friends, or engaging with yoga, or, things that are we know are good for our mental health and well-being. On the other hand, there's also that drive to be everything to everyone and to make sure that you're there for everyone. And there are many men that also, are in that situation as well, I think. But there is certainly a tendency, I think, for women to really fully invest in what they are doing and to give it everything. And that can sometimes mean that their prioritization of your own needs comes last, and you put other people ahead of you. I think, again, for me, it comes back to that personal awareness. So, how can we as individuals get to know ourselves better and to understand what we need to be successful in our work, in our home lives, in our social lives. Because the other piece of feedback that we often hear, is from women in particular, is that sense of failure, that, you're letting, I feel like I'm letting down so many people, which is probably based on that desire to be there for everyone and to be that person for everyone. So, we've heard this a million times that, it is that sense of, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. And keeping that front of mind, it sounds a bit cliche, but it actually is really important to keep at the front of your mind, particularly if you're in a role that is demanding and that, that it is taking a lot of your time. Consciously being aware and planning for how you are going to put on that oxygen mask regularly is critical. Yeah.
I mean, although I was on a plane yesterday and they did note to me that you actually have to take off your COVID mask before putting on your oxygen mask. So there's another little layer to it now.
There you go.
Sally, I want to, well, probably to both of you as well, I want to talk about some of the mechanisms that you think from a policy level could go into better supporting small businesses at this time as well. I mean, we've seen quite a number of different measures come into effect over the pandemic, but what from your perspective needs to continue, and particularly in the space of supporting women's mental health and all small businesses' mental health and wellbeing? Sally, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, look, Addie probably knows more from a mental health perspective, but I think I'm making more of a general comment and I can't sort of speak for government, but we've even experienced it in our business that we've had an increase in mental health incidents within our own team members. So I think it is absolutely an area that we all need to understand is becoming more and more important in our society, and how we manage that, and how, and part of our connection with Smiling Mind is around the preventative side of things, because we do absolutely believe that that's so critically important. And we also know that small business owners have a higher incident of mental health, than other demographics within our communities. So it's really important that I think our governments do understand and invest in that.
Yeah. Addie, anything that you would add there?
Oh, yeah, there's so much, isn't there? I think that from a policy level, I mean, the biggest challenge has been uncertainty, hasn't it, over the last almost 2 years, particularly for states that have faced, repeated changes to lockdowns and things like that. It's been really hard to navigate our businesses in the context of that. So I think trying to find a bit more stability will certainly help, and hopefully we're coming into a more stable period of time, hopefully. I think from a a mental health perspective, there are a number of initiatives that have come through that are great. So, investment in programs like the New Access program that's run by Beyond Blue for small businesses is amazing government led initiative. And if people are listening that aren't aware of that, it's a coaching program designed to support small business owners around their mental health and wellbeing, but providing a broader coaching approach, which means that you can you can unpack things, all of the factors that are impacting on your own mental health, which is really amazing. A program like that hasn't been available before on such a large scale. So it's great to see investment in programs like that. As Sally said, the preventative end of that spectrum is where we're very passionate and our focus is going. And that really is around, how do you help everyone, and particularly small business owners, think about their mental health much earlier on, rather than waiting until there are challenges that people are experiencing. So, we don't want people to be in that situation where their stress and anxiety is so high that they can't do their work, they can't lead the way they want to, and it's really impacting on their business and themselves and their family. If we can support people much earlier on to think about how they're proactively looking after their mental health and wellbeing, it will make a huge difference, not only to their mental health outcomes, but also to their business outcomes, because we know that, mental health and wellbeing and productivity and performance is so intricately connected. So from my perspective, I think, more from a small business perspective, but also more broadly in the mental health space, I would love to see much more focus on how we can support people to think about their mental health much more proactively. And how do we help people understand the link between, business success and our own mental health and wellbeing outcomes? Because looking at them separately, isn't that helpful. I think they're so closely connected. And there's a lot of work that we can do there.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing I want to ask you both and get you both to have a talk about is this work that MYOB and Smiling Mind have engaged in together, and you've put together some really excellent resources for small businesses around mindfulness. Sally, I'm just going to share the link in the comments section for everyone now. It's also available via that expo booth. But could you maybe give us a little bit more insight into how that came about and what its purpose is?
Yeah, look, so obviously we work really closely with small, medium-sized organisations, and we absolutely sort of care about them holistically in terms of managing their own business, but also managing themselves through that. So, gosh, it's probably two and a bit years ago now, Addie. So we went through a process of looking for a partner where we could work together in helping out more small business owners in managing that mental health, recognising through our research that it was a huge impactor throughout. And as Addie said, like, there's such an interconnection with the success of the business versus the mental health. But I think, both ways almost as well, some mental health and how that impacts on business profitability and success as well. So, yeah, we spoke to a number of people and, clearly found a really strong alliance with Smiling Mind, and through that have been able to do a number of research pieces, but also being able to bring that into our products and effectively advertising to those business owners working and using our products, and utilising specific times in the challenging times in the year as well, with end of financial year, recognising that to be able to help them sort of help themselves as well, and providing that access has been something that we're really proud of as well, and proud of the relationship.
Yeah. Look, Addie, sorry, was there anything else that you wanted to?
I was just going to jump in and explain a little bit more about the program, if we've got 1 minute.
Yeah.
So it's the small business program is freely accessible in the Smiling Mind app. And so the partnership with MYOB has been amazing for us because it's enabled us to develop content that speaks to small businesses and has been developed, with insights from small business owners and co-designed with small business owners. And from our perspective, it allows us to take some of the strategies that we teach to other communities and bring it into a really, for us, a new community. And it's very practical. It's designed to help people learn skills and strategies that help them manage their stress levels. It taps into thinking strategies around sleep and how important it is to get a good night's sleep to support our mental well-being. It looks at things like resilience and our relationships with other people as well, and how we can proactively look after those different domains. So it's a really practical tool, and I think that sometimes when we're talking about mental health and well-being, it can get a bit high level and complicated, but when it comes down to it, it's actually the things that we do every day that can help us support our mental health and well-being, and that's connected to our business as well. So you can, the really nice thing is that you can tie your, you could tie your bookkeeping and your, reconciling your bank accounts with a practice and really embed it within your everyday routine. They're very small, practical, bite-sized strategies that you can implement. So yeah, highly recommend having a look if you haven't already.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I want to thank you both so much for joining me today and kind of giving a greater breakdown and insight into this space. And I think it is such an important discussion to have at this moment in time, and to look at, the real strategies that small businesses can implement moving into next year. And I think, that notion that routine and structure and trying to implement that into what will be a new normal now is so critical. So thank you so much, and thank you again for the support from MYOB in bringing this entire event to life.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tarla.